addiction operates in the tiniest things that are not recognized as addiction. You can't stop eating the potato chips. And if you watch the movement, they don't do much. And it goes... It's an adding. You're not a lot of nutritional value, or it could be other kinds of junk food. Is the smoking. So food is a big one for many people. You don't only reincarnate into thought streams, you can reincarnate into food. And for a moment it seems to work. You feel a little bit more complete after eating a box of chocolates. I spoke to one person who has a big problem with weight, and he said the mind, he began to observe his own mind, and he came up with one thought the main thought that would justify his going to the fridge and eating was, "You've had a rough time, you deserve a break." And of course, every day he was having a rough time. And then he observed that mind movement. Oh. And next time it came, he allowed that mind movement to be there, and he just sat there with it, without moving to the fridge, because he recognized that. Kindly throw light on the following 2 points. 1. Why one form loves the other form even when the other form does not love the first form. I know what you mean. We know what you mean. Why is love not reciprocated? Why does one-way love traffic situation arise? I am placing my aching heart before you. Please operate. Thank you. All right, I will begin the operation. Now, one form loves and the other form doesn't reciprocate. Why is that? And the pain that comes with that. Great pain for many people. It's enormous pain. Now, you know that the basic condition of the self, or the egoic self, is one of a very deep-seated sense of lack, of not enough, of not complete. And then it tries to fill through strategies. The mind itself tries to fill that lack that it knows and feels almost continuously, except for brief moments when something has been put in there, and then for a moment the lack is not felt. It never lasts long. So it looks for the next thing, and it looks to the future, it looks to add to me, to fill that hole that is always there, where I'm not myself, I'm not complete, I'm not home, I haven't arrived. So all kinds of strategies are there. And one of the main areas where it looks to fulfill that lack is in the area of relationship, the other person, he or she. And then, when that happens, the entire focus of the self becomes focused on one other person who is perceived unconsciously as the one who is going to complete me, make me whole. He or she is the one. And so almost an obsessive attachment forms to that image, that form of that person. And that is called falling in love. And sometimes, if you're lucky, the other person feels the same about you, that you are going to complete him or her also. And of course that is great. You both feel that you are going to complete each other. And then probably you will want to get married, sign a contract, just to make sure that for the rest of your life you are going to complete me and you're not going to leave me, because that would have dire consequences if you broke that contract and left me. Don't you even think about it. And then you marry. This is where the films end. The director says cut here, but life goes on, and you marry, and after perhaps even during the honeymoon, the first doubt comes into your mind whether this actually works, whether the other is going to live up to that enormous task of fulfilling and completing you. And then you start an ordinary existence, jobs, family. Gradually, it doesn't seem to be working anymore. The completion, the sense of lack comes back. He or she isn't behaving in the way that he or she should to make me feel complete, make me happy. You read it in ads, I don't know if you read it in India, looking for man or woman to make me happy. Oh, wow. Who could live up to that? And nobody can. And then the lack that was covered up by the temporary delusion that this person was fulfilling you, this person who has a pain body, but you didn't know that, the temporary delusion that this person should be fulfilling you, that suddenly the sense of incompleteness, aloneness, fear, not being just re-emerges. But now, through your mind, you attach that to the other person and say, he or she is the cause for what I feel. You're feeling again the basic egoic condition. You're feeling it more strongly now because for a little while it was covered up by the love relationship. And so gradually, the love then periodically turns into hate. And every time the person is not fulfilling his obligations, or her, the love turns into aggression, hostility. Withdrawal, complete withdrawal. What's wrong with you? Nothing is wrong. Just don't want to talk. Whatever. Or throwing something, whatever it is. And then the relationship fluctuates. For a while it works again. And then it doesn't work. It works again, it doesn't work. And then it becomes, the periods when it doesn't work become longer. And you feel, it feels bad. The happiness of marriage turns into the unhappiness of just coexistence. The happiness of the honeymoon becomes the divorce. And they're all one, really. So it was an attempt to fulfill you through some form, some outer form. And then all that happens in the end, you sense the unfulfillment more strongly, and then you blame that form for causing you that pain. It's egoic pain. This is the pain that arises out of love-hate relationships. Now, the questioner, of course, is not at that stage, because it is one-way traffic, as he puts it. That great love is felt for this form, but it's not reciprocated. What do you do then? Then you feel that lack even more strongly. And it's painful. And there's the tendency for the mind to weave all kinds of fantasies around it, all kinds of stories. And the self gets in there and becomes a very painful self-image of me. And it can then, if that goes on, it can happen that that attraction turns into hate. Can happen. I'm not saying it will happen in your case. And then you see it never was love in the first place. So what is called love is that deep-seated need of the ego. It focuses on one form. So your opportunity now is to feel what you feel as much as possible. Get out of the mind weaving stories about it, fantasies, images. Be more interested in that unpleasant, painful feeling. And here is where you surrender. What you're really feeling is the egoic state, the egoic condition. And then the image will come up occasionally of that person. And focus on the feeling. Surrender into that. Accept that suffering. And any suffering that you accept in that way will work for you. It transmutes ego. Any suffering that is accepted completely transmutes ego, resolves ego, and also transmutes the suffering itself. So it's an opportunity. If not now, you would have to practice it. If your love were reciprocated, you would have to practice in a couple of years. You would have a year or two of illusion. That's nice. Second question. This form realizes that some actions are wrong. Still, the form does these actions knowing that they are not right. Why? That's the movement of human unconsciousness. Conditioned, egoic mind structures operate and they have such momentum that they still operate. The question is there a witnessing presence as they operate and those actions are being performed? Or does the witnessing presence come in after the action has been performed? And initially, as presence arises, it will come in after it's happened. You've gone through an unconscious movement, you've said something to someone, you have done something, and it was totally egoic, totally conditioned. Perhaps done it many times before. And millions of other human beings are doing or saying the same thing that you are at this very moment on the planet, performing the same action that you are performing, because it's basically the same human conditioning. In other words, there's nothing personal in it whatsoever. There's no you who did something bad. You is the arising presence. And you watch the movement of unconsciousness, the conditioned. If you watch at first, you can only watch it after it's happened. And then you can fall into the trap of feeling guilty about it and calling yourself bad. The ego loves that. If you can't call yourself good, we said it before, it'll be very happy calling yourself bad, because at least you know who you are. I'm no good. Oh, okay, now I know who I am. Better than not knowing anything, says the ego. So you can watch that and know it is human unconsciousness. And then, as presence arises, you will wake up in the middle of it. And that may happen next time. The same action, the same speech coming out of your mouth. And in the middle of it coming out of your mouth, there is a witnessing presence. And you can see it's like a script, an actor who has been conditioned to perform, to act out that script. And you've the same that many times before, the same strategy, the same, and now there's a witnessing presence there. And that is the beginning. This is now when those structures weaken, become less heavy. The moment the witness arises, those otherwise very heavy structures that you could never hope to get rid of unless you enter a different consciousness, a deeper, the non-conditioned. Suddenly they become bigger, and then it happens again. It may not be the last time, because there's a momentum to that. And all those other things that you know are there to enhance your sense of self and diminish somebody else's sense of self. Very favorable. One of the favorite ego strategies, delusions, through diminishing somebody else's sense of self by criticizing, accusing, saying something to hurt. You know it's wrong, you say it happens. And then in that moment the self feels bigger because it has diminished somebody else's self. A lot of suffering in human interactions is caused by that. And it's a form of delusion, of course, because you've only strengthened the delusion in yourself through that. And then suddenly, at first you see it after the event, and then you see it as it happens. And you look through it, you see the madness of it, that you have only strengthened an illusion. And all those things that are connected with ego structures, envy. Envy means you feel diminished in that illusory self because somebody else has or is able to do more than you. Has more of this, is better at that, has a nicer looking that, more knowledge, better appearance. You compare, and then you feel diminished, and then you feel hostility towards that entity that seemed to diminish you. It's all total madness, a total illusion. But it operates as motivating factors in people's lives. And then you try to add something to you to make somebody else feel envious, and then feel the self has grown. Are they looking at me? Is she seeing it? Is he seeing it? Or more subtle as knowledge, spiritual knowledge, even that can be used. Quoting scriptures, "You little worm, you know nothing, let me tell you." So all this, always the attempts through mad strategies to enhance one's sense of self. And all those things, I assume you're referring among those. So you hurt other people without knowing it. Create suffering for others in the service of self. And it always seems to work for a little while, and then you feel even worse, and you have to do it again. So the only way to get out of that, and I believe that's the question. So I've just explained why you do these things, that was the question. And that's really all you need to know, and just be there when it happens. You can't be there when it happens, be there just after it happened. And don't create an additional identity out of that. Just watch. You are not, it has nothing to do with who you are. You're watching unconsciousness in motion, the human condition. And so, more presence arises. Even in the midst of it, you will be present. And that is the fading out of all those movements and structures. That's the beauty of it. One more question. The Enneagram is an old Sufi model of the different aspects, qualities of soul, spirit, being, and their relation to different personality types. Have you studied it? I haven't studied it, but I've looked at it. Somebody gave me a book about it. And there are certain models, certain frameworks, there's another word, it's not coming to me, grids, through which you look. Astrology is another one, and there are others, many others. And you can look, and if they work, and some of them are quite helpful, they highlight those areas in which this particular form is particularly where the concentrations of unconsciousness are greatest. And although I only looked briefly, I spent maybe an hour with that book, and I found it very interesting. So it can be helpful because it highlights areas where unconsciousness particularly, this is the impression I got without really having studied it, the areas where there's particularly strong blockages, unconsciousness, particularly concentrated here, there, in those areas. So by applying that, it can be helpful. You can perhaps see in yourself where you need to look most. So it is not, there's not one of these that you cannot do without. as presence arises, you will see those things anyway, but it can be a helpful additional tool. And eventually, you let go of that. There's always the danger with any tool that people use that they become attached to the tool and believe a way of looking to be some kind of ultimate truth. To mistake a particular, perhaps a temporarily helpful perspective for the truth. Particularly if it seems to work for you, then you get very much attached to it. But any system through which you interpret reality could be temporarily helpful, then let go. This evening we are receiving a visit from Shanti Mai, who is an ashram. She's an American-born spiritual teacher and lives here now, has an ashram nearby, and she's coming with some of her people to perform songs for us, devotional songs. It will be quite beautiful. That reminds me, there were some questions about devotion, but we will come to them tomorrow. Devotion. What's true devotion? All these words, really, they're all aspects of one state. I have a strong feeling of devotion, continuously this devotion, not to any one particular thing, form, but when you know your own nothingness, you're in a state of devotion. It's hard to explain.